It was 4 a.m., and the cold dawn air seeped deep into Sarah's lungs. While others were sound asleep, Sarah was, as always, raising the heavy shutter of her diner. The sound of the old metal shutter creaking as it rose echoed through the quiet alley. Habitually, Sarah flipped the switch for the fluorescent lights in the kitchen. Under the cold, flickering light, the grease stains she hadn't managed to clean the night before came into view. Sighing, she sat down at the cash register. The money she had earned from a full day of slaving over a hot stove was a meager $320. After subtracting the $250 for today's ingredients, she would be left with only $70. Only $70 left, she muttered. That's not even enough to cover my own labor, let alone a cleaning services day rate. Sarah jotted the numbers down in a worn-out notebook. The electricity bill, gas bill, water bill, and the monthly rent that was always due. The more she added the numbers, the heavier her chest felt. She was carrying all this weight alone, while her husband, David, was undoubtedly sound asleep at home, oblivious to the world. The roughly $2,000 monthly salary David brought home was barely enough to contribute to their living expenses after he took out his own money for drinks and cigarettes. Opening the refrigerator to pull out a heavy box of vegetables for the day, Sarah muttered to herself, "What can he do with that money? He just complains that it's not even enough for his bar tabs." Just after 8 a.m., Sarah's phone rang loudly. The caller was her mother-in-law, Martha. Suppressing a sense of foreboding, Sarah wiped her wet hands on her apron and answered the phone. Martha got straight to the point, immediately grating on Sarah's nerves. "Sarah, as you know, the lease on our house is up in 2 months. The landlord called and said they're not renewing this time. They want us out." Her mother-in-law's voice was brazenly confident. In truth, the security deposit for that house had been paid with money from Sarah's parents when she got married, combined with the money she had painstakingly saved over 10 years of running the diner. Sarah's voice trembled as she asked, "Mom, so what's the plan? We need to start looking for a place." Martha scoffed. "What do you mean? What's the plan? You have to figure it out. You know what my son's salary is like. So why are you asking me? I hear you're making good money at the diner, right? You need to take care of it this time, too. Would you be comfortable if I ended up on the street at my age? You're a daughter-in-law, yet you don't seem to worry about your mother-in-law one bit." Sarah bit her lip hard. She wanted to complain that business wasn't what it used to be, that she worked from dawn till dusk with little to show for it, but her mother-in-law had no intention of listening. Instead, she dismissed Sarah's efforts as a given sacrifice. "Mom, business has been really tough lately, so I don't have much money. Please try to understand my situation." "You're so calculating. What do you mean business is bad? The place is always full of people. Anyway, you don't even recognize your own mother-in-law when it comes to money. I can't stand how inconsiderate you are. I don't know the details, so you just find a new place within 2 months." Her mother-in-law said her piece and hung up abruptly. Sarah stared blankly at her phone and let out a deep sigh. When she arrived home at 8 p.m., exhausted, the scene in the living room made her heart sink even further. Her husband, David, was sprawled on the couch, cackling at the television. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes, and empty snack bags he had left behind were scattered on the floor. When Sarah brought up the issue of his mother's lease, David answered dismissively while flipping through the channels. "Honey, your mom's lease is up. What are we going to do? You need to think about it too. It'll work out somehow. We still have 2 months. Why are you making such a fuss already? Your problem, Sarah, is that you're too uptight. You need to learn to relax a little." "Relax? Does money just appear out of nowhere? It's $240,000. You know your salary can't even cover the interest on a loan that big." As Sarah raised her voice, David got annoyed and stood up from the couch. "I'm frustrated too. But what can I do if I'm not capable? You want me to just die or something? Your diner is doing well. You just have to work a little harder. We can't let my mom end up on the street, can we? Do your part as a daughter-in-law." Sarah went to the kitchen and drank a glass of cold water. The word duty stabbed her heart like a dagger. She couldn't tell if she was the head of this household or just a machine that brought in money. When she served dinner and placed it in front of David, he picked up his spoon without a word of thanks. Sarah sat across from him and asked, holding on to a final shred of hope, "Don't you have any savings from your salary? Even a little would help." Chewing his food, David answered with annoyance, "You think it's possible to save anything on a $2,000 salary? I have expenses to maintain my professional life. Do you want me to be disrespected at work? You're really starting to get on my nerves." The next morning, Sarah dragged her heavy body back to the diner. The loneliness of having no one on her side was more painful than any physical exhaustion. But around 3 p.m., a message arrived that would completely shatter her life. It was a text from David. The devastating news was that he had received a wage garnishment notice from his company. Her hands shaking, Sarah called him. Garnishment? What are you talking about? Why would they garnish your wages? David confessed in a tearful voice, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I co-signed a loan for a friend a while back, and I think it went bad. He disappeared, and the creditors must have contacted my company. If I don't pay back $30,000 immediately, I won't get a single penny of my salary. Please, help me. Sarah ran out into the alley behind the diner. Oblivious to the customers watching, she screamed, $30,000? Are you kidding me? Do you know how much I have to work, smelling of grease from dawn till dusk, to earn that? I'm already struggling to figure out your mother's deposit, and now I have to pay your debt too? Are you even human? How could you do this to me? I'm really sorry. I didn't know it would turn out like this. If you don't help me, I might lose my job. For our family's sake, can't you just help me this one time? David shamelessly used their family as a shield to pressure her until the very end. Sarah hung up and leaned her head against the cold brick wall. Tears streamed down her face. But inside the kitchen, a customer's order was burning. She wiped her tears away fiercely. She hated a reality that didn't even give her time to grieve. Fine, she thought. I'll support this entire family. If this is how you're going to treat me, then I'll do things my way from now on. With cold eyes, Sarah stared back into the diner. She felt something hardening deep inside her. Her goal was no longer just to feed her family, but to make those who had deceived and used her pay a bitter price. Putting her mask back on, Sarah forced a smile for the customers and walked back into the diner. As the lease expiration date drew closer, Sarah's heart felt like it was being squeezed tighter every day. Every time she looked at the calendar, the red circle marking the date felt like a death sentence. There was only 1 month left. After closing the diner, Sarah sat alone at the empty counter and began to take out the bank books she had tucked away deep in her bag. 5 savings account books, representing over 10 years of blood and sweat, working without a single holiday off, and 1 business account for the diner lay on the table. When she added up all the numbers, it came to exactly $240,000. This money is my entire future, my retirement, everything. Am I really supposed to just hand this over to them? Sarah whispered, wiping a tear that fell onto the bank book. Meanwhile, her husband, David, had boasted about looking into loans, but the result was as expected. There wasn't a single financial institution in the world willing to lend money to someone with a rock-bottom credit score from a co-signing default. David came home from work, threw his bag down, and brazenly turned the tables. Sarah, I'm really sorry, but I've checked everywhere. The lending regulations are so strict these days. I can't get a single penny in my name. What can I do? That's just how things are. Sarah let out a bitter laugh and asked coldly, when you say you checked everywhere, don't you just mean you did a few internet searches while lying in bed? Did you even bother to go out and try in person? David, pricked by his conscience, hung his head low but offered no excuse. He just fidgeted with his toes, watching Sarah's expression. Just then, another call came from his mother, Martha. Sarah stared at the ringing phone for a long moment before answering with resolve. Martha's sharp voice poured out of the receiver. Hey, Sarah, what are you doing? The landlord is calling me every day, pestering me. What's happening with the money? Are you planning to let us get kicked out onto the street? Mom, I'm doing everything I can to get the money together. Please just wait a little longer. Wait? What more is there to wait for? We have less than a month left. You run a decent diner, and you can't even come up with this much money? What kind of daughter-in-law are you? Get it sorted out. Quickly. Martha yelled as if Sarah owed her the money. Sarah silently endured the ear-splitting criticism and replied, I will take care of it. So, please, stop rushing me. Take care of it? It's your duty. So don't act like you're doing me a favor. Just deposit the money. We're out of time. The call ended rudely. Sarah put down her phone and took a deep breath of the cold air. The next morning, Sarah left the house earlier than usual. She wasn't heading to the diner, but to the bank. Her heart pounded as she took a number and waited. When it was finally her turn, she pushed all 5 savings books through the teller's window. I'd like to close all of these accounts, please. Everything. The bank teller, surprised, checked the documents and asked cautiously, Ma'am, These accounts mature next month. If you close them now, you'll lose a significant amount in interest. Are you sure you want to do this? If you wait just a little longer, you could receive several $1,000s more. With a trembling hand, Sarah signed the withdrawal form and replied, "It's fine. Something more urgent than a person's life has come up. Please, just proceed." The sound of the machine processing the accounts echoed coldly. Sarah watched blankly as 10 years of her life turned into mere slips of paper in just a few minutes. An hour later, after emptying her business account as well, she held a cashier's check for $240,000 in her hand. "This is my entire life," she whispered. "My blood and sweat are all in here." She tucked the check deep into her purse. When she returned home, her mother-in-law, Martha, and her husband, David, were already seated in the living room. Both of their eyes were fixed on Sarah's purse. Martha spoke first. "Well, did you get the money? How much is it? Is it exactly $240,000? "Yes, Mom. Here it is, a check for $240,000. Before Sarah could finish her sentence, Martha's eyes gleamed, like a predator spotting its prey. "Good. Go to the real estate agent tomorrow and sign the lease. Oh, and don't forget the most important thing. The lease agreement must be in our son, David's name. A household is peaceful only when the man is the head of the house." Sarah slowly shook her head and said firmly, "No, Mom. Since it's my money, the lease will be in my name." For a moment, Martha looked as if she couldn't believe her ears, her face contorting into a scowl. "What did you just say? If it's not in my son's name, whose name will it be in? How dare you defy your mother-in-law? It will be in my name. Did David contribute a single penny to this? This is my property, which I earned by working sleepless nights. So, it's only natural that it's in my name. Where did you learn such insolence? Don't you know that a husband and wife are one? My money is David's money, and David's money is my money. It's better for tax purposes later if it's in my son's name. What do you know? Being so stubborn." Martha's face turned beet red as she gestured wildly. Sarah didn't flinch and looked David straight in the eye. "Honey, what do you think? Do you think it's right for this house, which you didn't contribute a penny to be in your name?" David glanced at his mother and mumbled in a barely audible voice, "Sarah, let's just do as Mom says. It's the house we'll live in. What does the name on the lease matter? It will make Mom feel better, and it helps my standing at work. You want me to give up my entire life savings to save your face? In your dreams. I will never do that." At Sarah's firm stance, Martha started screaming and throwing a tantrum again. "You vicious thing. How much must you disrespect my son to say something like that? We don't need a daughter-in-law like you in this family. Sign the contract in my son's name, right now." "Mom, I'm not disrespecting him. I'm stating a fact. If he's incapable, he should at least keep his mouth shut. Trying to take all the money I've saved my entire life and act like the owner of the house, isn't that the mentality of a thief?" Stung by Sarah's retort, Martha was speechless, her mouth agape. The next day, leaving her mother-in-law's tantrum behind, Sarah went to the real estate office alone. She handed her ID and the check to the agent and said clearly, "The lessee's name is to be Sarah Johnson. Not joint tenancy, but sole tenancy." After all the procedures were completed, the lease agreement, with Sarah's name clearly printed on it, was in her hands. When she returned home, Martha, who had been waiting at the entrance, snatched the contract from her. Upon confirming the name in the lessee section, Martha's face instantly turned pale. You really put it in your name? You crazy bitch. Are you out of your mind?" Martha's hands trembled as she threw the contract on the floor. Sarah smiled coldly, picked it up, and put it back in her purse. "Mom, I knew everything from the beginning. I know you called the landlord beforehand and encouraged them to raise the rent, and that you plan to pocket the difference in your son's name. All of it." Martha's eyes darted around in panic. Sarah looked down at her mother-in-law coldly and delivered a final warning. "You tried to use my entire life savings in the name of family, didn't you? This is the last time, from now on. If you want to live in this house that was bought with my money, you will follow my rules, or you can get out right now." Sarah walked into her room without a second glance, leaving only the sound of Martha's shrieking sobs echoing in the empty living room. Exactly 1 week had passed since Sarah had, after much struggle, finalized the lease in her name. The diner kitchen was a mess after the lunch rush, filled with the smell of caked-on grease and a mountain of dirty dishes. Sarah was wearing rubber gloves, washing dishes non-stop. when her husband David's phone, which was on a corner of the counter, began to vibrate loudly. Lately, David had been receiving an unusual number of calls from unknown numbers. Hello? Yes. Yes. I understand. It's a bit difficult right now, so please just wait a little longer. I'll get back to you soon. David glanced at Sarah and quickly stepped out the back door of the diner to continue his call. Sarah turned off the running water and held her breath, straining to hear her husband's voice from outside. The word deposit cut sharply through the air and into her ears. Wiping her hands hastily on a damp towel, Sarah walked straight outside. David was startled to see her and quickly ended the call. Sarah crossed her arms and stared at her husband with cold eyes. Who are you talking to so secretly? I just heard you mention a deposit. What was that call about? What call? David's face was pale as he nervously shoved his phone deep into his pocket and stammered. Oh, it was nothing. Just a work-related call from the office. Don't worry about it. Just go back inside and work. Why would a work call be about a deposit? And if it was for work, why did you have to sneak away from me to take it? What are you hiding? The number of calls you've been getting lately is unusually high. As Sarah took a step closer and pressed him, David avoided her gaze and just cleared his throat. Sarah could no longer hold back and snatched the phone from David's pocket. Hey, don't. Give it back. Sarah. David lunged to get the phone back, but Sarah was faster. The screen, which wasn't even locked, lit up to reveal dozens of calls from unknown numbers in the call history, and the text message inbox was a disaster. Ominous words like debt collection, law firm, and forced seizure, pending, filled the screen. What is all this? Debt collection and law firms. Did you get into trouble again? What is it this time? Sarah's voice echoed sharply in the alley behind the diner. David, as if resigned, hung his head and began to speak in a hushed tone. Sarah, I can explain. Please, just calm down and listen to me. Do you remember that loan I co-signed for a friend? It turns out the amount was a bit bigger than I thought. With interest, it's now around $50,000. $50,000. Did you just say $50,000? Are you out of your mind? And you've been hiding this from me all this time. Sarah felt the world spin. It had only been a week since she had scraped together every last penny to come up with the $240,000 for the lease, and now another $50,000. David, however, had the audacity to throw his hands up and make excuses. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just didn't want you to worry. I've been racking my brain day and night trying to figure out how to handle it on my own. Do you think I've just been sitting around doing nothing? Handle it? What money do you have to handle it with? Your wages are already being garnished. I paid for the lease, and I bring in the money for our living expenses. Where on earth were you going to get $50,000? Sarah waved the phone in her husband's face, her voice filled with anguish. David couldn't answer and just kicked at the ground with his foot. That evening, Sarah went to see her mother-in-law, Martha. Martha was sitting arrogantly on the living room couch, peeling fruit and watching a TV drama. Mom, did you know that David is being hounded by debt collectors because of a loan he co-signed? Without taking her eyes off the television, Martha replied indifferently. Of course I knew. David isn't the type to burden others with his problems. He must have been really desperate to tell me. You knew and you didn't say a word to me. How could you watch me bleed myself dry to come up with the lease money and just keep your mouth shut? Only then did Martha put down the remote and stare at Sarah. If I told you, you'd just make a scene like you are now. I told him to keep quiet because I didn't want to cause trouble in the family. What's the big deal? Why are you questioning your mother-in-law? A big deal? Do you think $50,000 is pocket change? Am I even part of this family? Why am I always the one left in the dark when something important happens? Lower your voice. The neighbors will think we've gone bankrupt. What's done is done. What's the point of arguing about it now? You really make life difficult for yourself. Martha nonchalantly picked up a slice of apple with her fork and put it in her mouth. Sarah clenched her fists, trembling with rage. Mom, are you by any chance hoping I'll take care of this too? Is that why you both conspired to hide it from me? Hoping? He's your husband. If you don't do it, who will? If David can't solve it, you have to, don't you? Otherwise, if our David is publicly shamed and gets fired from his job, who's going to deal with the aftermath? It all comes back to hurt you. Martha's logic was clear. Her son's mistake was an unfortunate accident, and cleaning up the mess was naturally the duty of the money-earning daughter-in-law. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she looked at her mother-in-law. The next day, Sarah sat the returned David down and confronted him again. Your mother knew everything. The two of you planned it and completely deceived me. You said you hid it because you were worried about me? No. You treated me like an insurance policy. Sarah, that's a bit harsh. I was just consulting with my mom. I really was going to tell you after I had it all sorted out. I'm suffering too, you know. Suffering. If you're suffering, what about me? I work from dawn till dusk, smelling of grease, terrified that this family will fall apart. And all you do is dig us into a deeper hole. Where are you going to get $50,000 right now? That's the problem. I can't get a loan, so I was discussing it with Mom. Couldn't you just help a little? David shamelessly tried to take Sarah's hand. Sarah coldly shook him off. That night, Martha slyly entered Sarah's room. Sarah, you must not, under any circumstances, contact the creditors or let on that you know anything. If those people find out the lease is in your name, we're in big trouble. They could put a lien on that security deposit immediately. So what do you want me to do? Live as a fugitive for the rest of my life? Just keep your mouth shut for now. We can buy some time and figure something out. You're a smart girl. Find a loophole. This is all for our family. Martha patted Sarah's shoulder as if she were doing her a great favor. Sarah roughly brushed off her mother-in-law's hand and shot back coldly. So, in the end, my money was this family's reliable insurance policy. A cash machine that could be used any time a problem came up. That's why you've been lying to me and using me all this time, right? What a hurtful thing to say. We're a family. It's natural for family members to help each other. Martha left the room without a hint of guilt. Sarah sank to the floor in the dark room, feeling as if she were sinking to the bottom of a pit. I was the insurance policy for this house. My hard-earned money was just for cleaning up their messes. Hot tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks. But these were not tears of sadness. They were the beginning of an uncontrollable rage towards her husband and mother-in-law who had utterly betrayed her. In the darkness, Sarah's eyes glinted as she made a resolution. She would absolutely not go down without a fight. Her mother-in-law, Martha, walked into the living room. A bright smile plastered across her face. But to Sarah, that smile felt like a poison chalice. Martha settled herself arrogantly on the sofa, and then casually tossed a remark at Sarah, who was washing dishes. Sarah, I've decided. We're having a housewarming party next Saturday. I'm inviting all the relatives and my friends, so you know. Sarah stopped washing the dishes and stared blankly at her mother-in-law. For Sarah, who had scraped together every last penny, even dipping into her diner's operating funds, to afford the $240,000 security deposit, a housewarming party was an unimaginable luxury. Mom, a housewarming party now? You know my financial situation is tight, right? And I'm busy with the diner. Martha narrowed her eyes, not bothering to hide her displeasure. We renewed the lease. So, of course, we should have a party to celebrate a new beginning. What are you talking about? We have appearances to maintain. It's not proper to just let it pass quietly. Think about our family's reputation. I've already told all the relatives and my friends, so clear your schedule for Saturday. Sarah bit her lip and asked about the number of guests. Martha counted on her fingers and answered lightly. About 20 people. Our family members and my social club friends should be around that number. Prepare plenty of food. 20 people. To prepare food for that many people by herself, she would have to stay up all night. Sarah's voice trembled as she suggested ordering takeout, but Martha immediately shot her down. Takeout? What do you mean, takeout? The guests feel properly hosted only when the daughter-in-law cooks with sincerity. You run a diner. You're a good cook. Don't make a fuss over something that just requires a little effort. Are you trying to embarrass me? Martha waved her hand dismissively and went into her room. Sarah stood in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the empty refrigerator, feeling utterly devastated. Her husband, David, who came home from work that evening, was even more infuriating. When Sarah asked for a guest list, he replied with annoyance. Honey, Mom said she'll take care of everything. So why do you keep asking me? Just do as she says. My head is about to explode from work right now. David, completely oblivious to Sarah's struggles, closed his door and went into his room. Until Thursday evening, her mother-in-law still hadn't given her an exact head count, just irresponsibly repeating that she should prepare a lot. In the end, Sarah went to the market by herself early Friday morning. She filled 2 shopping carts to the brim and still had to carry heavy bags in both hands on her way back. The grocery receipt showed a total of $700. As the cashier swiped her card, Sarah wept silently. This money, too, had come solely from Sarah's pocket. without any help from anyone else. The night of preparation for the housewarming was a cruel, unforgettable time for Sarah. She had even closed the diner to focus on the preparations, which were finally finished just after 4 a.m. The kitchen was filled with thick smoke and the smell of various foods, and 3 distinct, red burn marks were visible on the back of Sarah's hand. Hot oil had splattered on her while she was making sliders, but she hadn't even had time to run her hand under cold water. Placing the last of the salad onto a platter, Sarah gasped for breath. Just this, and it's done. I'm almost there. The clock on the wall showed it was already 4:30 a.m. Overcome with exhaustion, Sarah threw herself onto the living room sofa. She hadn't even washed up, and as soon as she closed her eyes, a deep sleep, like falling into a mire, washed over her. But just 2 hours later, the piercing sound of her alarm shattered her brief rest. It was less than 5 hours until the guests were scheduled to arrive at 2 p.m. Sarah dragged her heavy body up and began to wipe down the living room tables again. She arranged dozens of plates at regular intervals and even placed fresh flowers in a vase, creating a perfect housewarming spread that could rival a model home. All that was left was her own appearance. Her reflection in the mirror was pitiful. The dark circles under her eyes and her dull skin were a testament to her all-night labor. Sarah quickly showered and put on a simple dress she had been saving. She layered on foundation, desperately trying to conceal her exhausted complexion. At 1:50 p.m., with all preparations finally complete, Sarah walked into the living room, only to be met by her mother-in-law Martha's cold gaze. Martha was sitting arrogantly on the sofa, looking Sarah up and down. When Sarah cautiously mentioned that everything was ready, Martha opened her mouth, her expression one of disgust, as if looking at an insect. "Sarah, are you planning to stay here looking like that? This is not your place today." Sarah couldn't believe her ears. This was the first thing her mother-in-law said to her. The daughter-in-law, who had single-handedly prepared food for dozens of people and cleaned the entire house. "Mom, what are you talking about? I stayed up all night, without a wink of sleep, to prepare all this food. I should at least greet the guests when they arrive." "Greet them? What is there to greet? Preparing the food is your duty as a daughter-in-law. Being present in front of the guests is a separate issue. Our son's friends and the family elders are coming. If you hang around with that cheap, diner owner vibe, you'll just ruin the atmosphere. So, for today, you will act like you don't exist." Martha said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world, driving a nail into Sarah's heart. Sarah's voice trembled with indignation. "Duty? I worked so hard I even burned my hand, just to save your face. And now you're telling me to stay out of sight? Does that make any sense?" "It's not a matter of making sense or not. Your role ended when the food was made. Now you're just in the way. So either lock yourself in that room or leave the house altogether. Don't loiter around the living room and be seen by the guests." Martha waved her hand dismissively and disappeared into her room. Sarah felt like the blood in her veins was boiling. Just then, her husband, David, came out of his room. Sarah grabbed his sleeve, holding on to a final glimmer of hope. "You heard what your mother said, right? How can she do this? Am I a stranger? Am I the maid in this house?" But David avoided Sarah's eyes and cowardly turned his head away. "Sarah, Mom must have her reasons. The people coming today are a bit particular, so I guess she wants to maintain her image. Can't you just put up with it for one day? I'll buy you something nice later." "Image? This is my house, that I paid for with my $240,000. My being here is what ruins your image. You always tell me to just endure it, but why can't you say a single word to your mother? Are you even a decent human being?" As Sarah vented her frustration, David grew irritated and turned the tables on her. "If I say something, it'll just make the atmosphere in the house worse. Everyone will be happy if you just make this one sacrifice. Why do you always have to make things difficult? Please, just act like an adult." David's cowardly words snapped Sarah's last thread of patience. She let out a hollow laugh and grabbed her purse. There was no longer any reason for her to stay in this house. As Sarah headed for the door, Martha came out of her room again and blocked her way. "Where are you going? I told you to stay out of sight. Are you really leaving?" "Yes, Mom. I'll disappear, just as you wished. Are you satisfied now?" "That's that. But leave the house key on your way out. I can't trust you with it. Who knows when you might suddenly barge in and startle the guests." Martha held out her palm expectantly. With a trembling hand, Sarah took the key ring out of her purse. The shame of having to hand over the key to her own house, bought with over a decade of her blood and sweat, to the very people who were kicking her out, was overwhelming. Sarah roughly dropped the keys into Martha's palm. Martha smiled victoriously and clenched her fist around them. There. Now we're getting somewhere. Go get some dinner outside and come back late. Sarah walked out the front door without looking back. Behind her, David shouted for her to be sure to come back that evening. But as Sarah, his voice sounded like the noise of hell. Walking down the stairs, Sarah's hands trembled with rage. She hailed a cab and headed to her mother's house. Her mother, Jane, opened the door and was shocked to see Sarah's haggard appearance. As soon as Sarah was in her mother's arms, she burst into sobs she had held back for so long. After a long while of patting her daughter's back, Jane, upon hearing the whole story, flushed with anger. What? Are those people even human? They steal the food you made all night and then kick you out? And they took your key? Sarah, you can't put up with this anymore. That house is not a family. Mom, I've reached my limit. I endured it all this time because I wanted to take care of you and keep my family together. But they don't even see me as a person. They just think of me as a money machine, a cooking machine. Wiping her tears, Sarah's eyes turned cold as she turned on her phone. She began to search for family law attorneys online. Mom, I'm not going back to that house. Or if I do, it won't be like before. I'm going to get back my money, my house, and my self-respect. I know better than anyone that without me, those people can't even breathe. Jane squeezed her determined daughter's hand tightly. You've made the right decision, my dear. It's time to leave that hell. I'll support you all the way. Sarah saved the contact information for several law firms, making a vow. The lavish housewarming party that had excluded her would be the beginning of the most miserable day of their lives. A cold, hard flame of revenge was burning in Sarah's eyes, stronger than ever before. That night, after the housewarming party ended, Sarah's phone started ringing. It was David. Sarah just looked at the screen and didn't answer. Once, twice, 3 times. David kept calling. I'm not going to answer. Sarah turned her phone face down and ate the dinner her mother had prepared for her. Jane asked with a worried expression, Is that David calling? Yes. I don't want to talk to him. Good. The most important thing right now is to take care of yourself. Jane patted her daughter's shoulder. Sarah took a spoonful of rice and put it in her mouth. At 11 p.m., she checked her phone. There were 3 missed calls. 18 from David, 5 from Martha, and over 30 text messages. She opened David's texts. Sarah, please pick up the phone. Where are you? Come home. We need to talk. Please, just get in touch. I'm worried. Sarah read the messages and immediately deleted them. She checked Martha's messages too. Sarah, come home right now. Put money in the household expense account. Now. If you don't contact me, I'll come find you myself. Sarah laughed scornfully. Put money in the household account. Unbelievable. She put her phone aside and closed her eyes. The next morning, when she turned on her phone, there were 5 more missed calls, all from David and Martha. Texts flooded in as well. Sarah, go grocery shopping. There's nothing to eat at home. The house needs cleaning. When are you coming back? The laundry is piling up. Now. Sarah clenched her fists as she read each message. They were all commands. Not requests, but demands. She read David's messages too. Sarah, Mom is angry. Come home quickly and appease her. Send some money for living expenses. Is the account empty? Sarah, please try to understand. You know what Mom is like. Sarah wanted to throw her phone, but she held back and put it down. Jane knocked on her door. Honey, breakfast is ready. Okay, Mom, I'm coming. Sarah went to the living room and ate. Jane asked, A lot of calls from your in-laws? Yes, a ton. What do they want? They want me to send money. They say they have no money for living expenses. Jane slammed her spoon down on the table. Living expenses? After you paid for the house with your own money, they're asking for living expenses too? The nerve of them. It's okay, Mom. I don't care anymore, Sarah said calmly. Jane looked at her daughter with concern. At 2 p.m., David called again. Sarah put her phone on silent. David's name repeatedly appeared on the screen and then disappeared. Martha called too. Sarah didn't answer. At 7 p.m., Sarah checked her call log. There were a total of 89 missed calls. 60 from David, 29 from Martha. 89 calls. Sarah muttered to herself. She found it amusing. Another text came from David. Sarah, please, just pick up the phone. Mom keeps asking for you. Sarah sent a reply. Just one short line. If you need something, send a text. David replied immediately. Send some money for living expenses. Mom couldn't go grocery shopping. Use the money from your account. I don't know the PIN. You don't know it because I never told you. Sarah replied coldly. David called, but Sarah didn't answer. A text came from Martha. Sarah, how are we supposed to live without living expenses? Sarah didn't reply. Martha sent another text. Send money right now, or I'll come to your mother's house. Sarah put her phone down. She felt nothing. The next day, David called again. This time, Sarah answered. Sarah? You finally picked up. What is it? Sarah's voice was cold. David was flustered and stammered. Well, I think you need to send some money for living expenses. You can use the money from your account. I don't know the PIN. Tell me. I have no intention of telling you. Sarah, what are you talking about? We're married. If we were a married couple, you shouldn't have excluded me from the housewarming. David was speechless and fell silent. Sarah spoke again. If you need something, send a text. I won't be answering your calls. Sarah, please. Sarah hung up, and then she blocked David's number. A text came from Martha. Sarah, if you do this, how are we supposed to live? Sarah replied. Think about how I lived. Martha immediately called, but Sarah blocked her number too. It's over now. Emotions blocked. Sarah put her phone down and lay on her bed. She felt strangely at peace. Jane opened the door and came in. Honey, are you okay? Yes, Mom. I'm okay. Really? Sarah smiled brightly. Jane looked at her daughter with a relieved expression. You did the right thing. Now, live your own life. Sarah nodded. A week had passed since Sarah had fled that hellish house. During that week, the household without Sarah had come to a complete standstill, like a stopped clock. On the living room table, various bills that Sarah would normally have neatly organized were scattered in a messy pile. The utility bill, electricity bill, gas bill, and even the internet bill, the red warning notices on the past due papers stung Martha's eyes. Irritably waving the bills, Martha yelled for David, who was holed up in his room. Hey, David, do you have any idea what all this is? The utility bill and everything else has come. What are you going to do about it? David emerged from his room, looking disheveled, and glanced at the bills strewn across the dining table. Then, he answered with infuriating nonchalance. Mom, Sarah always used to take care of that. Just call her and tell her to pay it. I don't know anything about it. Do you think I haven't tried calling? That vicious woman must have blocked my number. It doesn't even ring. I send texts, and she reads them but doesn't reply. You're her husband. You should be the one to call and sort it out. David let out a deep sigh and collapsed onto the sofa. She's not answering my calls either. A few days ago, she must have blocked my number too, because I can't get through. And I don't have any money. You know my wages are being garnished this month, so I don't have a single dime in my account. Martha's face turned red with disbelief. So you're telling us to just starve to death? Sarah paid for the lease, fine, but we still need money to live on. What kind of daughter-in-law starves her mother-in-law like this? Muttering, Martha yanked open the kitchen refrigerator door. But instead of the side dishes she had expected, the sour smell of week-old stew from the housewarming party hit her nose. The refrigerator, neglected since Sarah had stopped managing the household, was empty, and the rice container was also scraped clean. Staring at the empty refrigerator, Martha spat out curses. That Sarah, she must have really lost her mind. How could she just leave without making any food? What are the rest of us supposed to do? She must have come from a family with no breeding. She doesn't have an ounce of decency. David, who had been listening, couldn't take it anymore and chimed in. Mom, why would Sarah have made food before she left? You're the one who threw her out so cruelly on the day of the housewarming. You thought she'd just come crawling back after the party was over, didn't you? You even took her key. Flustered, Martha tried to hide her embarrassment by raising her voice. When did I throw her out? I just told her to stay out of the way for a bit because the guests might be uncomfortable. And I took the key because I was worried that vicious woman might barge in and cause a scene. I was just trying to protect the family. Why are you blaming me? As the pathetic mother-son argument continued, an unfamiliar number called David's phone. Hoping it might be Sarah, David quickly answered. But the voice on the other end was a cold, robotic man's voice. Is this David Miller? We are from Han River Law Firm. We're calling regarding the debt from the loan you co-signed for your friend. David's face instantly turned ashen. Martha, watching from the side, held her breath. Yes, but my situation is a bit difficult right now. Mr. Miller, We have already extended your payment deadline 3 times. If you do not repay the $50,000 by this Friday, we will have no choice but to proceed with legal action as promised. Your wages are already being garnished, but since that is not enough, we are considering seizing your personal property and putting a lien on your security deposit. David clutched his head and begged, "Please, can't you just give me a little more time? I'll find a way to get the money. The deadline is Friday at 6 p.m. If we do not receive the payment, a bailiff will be sent to your house immediately. Keep that in mind." The call ended abruptly. David collapsed to the floor. Martha rushed over to him. "David, what's wrong? What was that call about?" "Mom, if I don't pay back $50,000 by Friday, they're going to come and put foreclosure notices on everything in our house. They're even going to put a lien on the security deposit. What do we do? We're really going to be ruined." Martha screamed and beat her chest. She couldn't think of any way to come up with such a large sum of money. Then, an idea flashed in her mind. "Get it from Sarah. Call Sarah and tell her to give you the $30,000 right now. You're her husband. She wouldn't refuse to help that much, would she?" "Mom, are you crazy? Why would Sarah help? She's already completely done with us. But you're still legally married. Does it make sense for a wife to ignore her husband's debt? You go to her parents' house tomorrow. Get on your knees. Beg. Do whatever it takes to get that money. Otherwise, we'll both end up on the street." Unable to refuse Martha's incessant nagging, David dragged his heavy feet to Sarah's parents' house the next day. His hand trembled slightly as he rang the doorbell. The person who opened the door was Sarah's mother, Jane. As soon as she saw David, she blocked his way with an icy expression. "What are you doing here? Isn't it enough that you've tormented our daughter? Now you've come all the way here?" "Mom, please, just let me see Sarah. Something really urgent has come up. Please let me talk to her." Jane crossed her arms and sneered. "Urgent business? I bet it's about money. Did you think I wouldn't know you came here to leech off our Sarah again? After the humiliation you put her through on the day of the housewarming, you still have the nerve to show your face here. You really are shameless." "That was a misunderstanding on my mom's part. I couldn't do anything about it. Mom, please, just help me this once. I'm in real trouble if I don't pay back $50,000. As David bowed low in the street, begging, Jane's voice grew louder. "Couldn't do anything? You just stood by and watched while my daughter was being insulted and thrown out by her mother-in-law. Is that what a human being does? My daughter is not going to live with someone like you anymore. Get out of here, now. If you show up here again, I'll call the police and file for a restraining order." Jane roughly pushed David's hand away and slammed the door. David stood blankly in front of the closed door for a long time. And then, the fateful Friday morning arrived. David, holding on to a sliver of hope, opened his banking app, but the sight on the screen made him want to scream. Due to a court-ordered seizure, even the small amount of money left in his account had been drained, and his balance showed negative $30,000. When David told Martha the news, she shrieked and rolled on the living room floor. "This is all Sarah's fault. It's because that woman betrayed us. She ran away to save herself and left us in this mess. Where in the world is there a daughter-in-law like her?" Martha wailed, blaming Sarah to the very end, without a single thought for her own faults. At that moment, Sarah was in her mother's living room, calmly finishing a final call with her lawyer. Dozens of documents were laid out in front of her. "Yes, Mr. Davis. Please file the motion to seize my husband's personal property and the divorce petition. And please make sure to firmly assert my rights to the security deposit. There's no reason to wait any longer." Sarah hung up the phone and smiled calmly at her mother, Jane, who was watching her. "Mom, it's starting now. That house, that money, and that fake filial piety they held so dear, I'm going to put it all back in its proper place. I'm not going to save them anymore. In fact, I'm going to watch them fall from the front row." Sarah's voice was calm, but firmer than ever. All that was left for Sarah was not pity for them, but a thoroughly prepared trial of justice. Sarah sat at the desk in her childhood room, organizing the remnants of her past life. Piled on the desk were documents representing the blood and sweat she had poured into securing the house. The lease agreement, bank transfer records, account statements all clearly showed the $240,000 being withdrawn from her account without a single error. "The evidence is perfect," she murmured. "There's no reason to hesitate anymore." She neatly placed the documents into a file. Just then, her mother, Jane, came into the room with a warm cup of tea. "Honey, are you all ready to meet the lawyer? You haven't missed any documents." Yes, Mom. I've got everything from the bank records to the lease agreement. I'm going to go and tie up all the loose ends for good. Jane gave her daughter's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. With a determined expression, Sarah nodded, packed her bag, and left the house. At the lawyer's office, the lawyer meticulously reviewed the documents Sarah had brought. As he flipped through the papers, his eyes lit up with confidence. Miss Johnson, this evidence is absolutely perfect. The entire security deposit was paid with a cashier's check issued in your name, which can be proven by the serial number. The lease agreement also lists you as the sole lessee. There's no room for debate here. Yes, it's my entire life savings, which I saved up penny by penny over 10 years of running my diner. And what would you say was your husband's financial contribution? None whatsoever. In fact, he was living off me, with his wages garnished due to a co-signing default. I was even covering the interest on his debt. The lawyer organized the documents into a file and spoke decisively. You are in an overwhelmingly advantageous position for the division of assets. Let's proceed with the divorce petition immediately. The chances of winning are 100%. Yes, Mr. Davis. I'll be counting on you. Sarah replied calmly. The lawyer asked cautiously, will you be informing your in-laws of the lawsuit beforehand? No, there's no need. I don't want to give them a lengthy explanation at this point. They'll find out when they receive the court notice. After leaving the office, Sarah and Jane went to a nearby cafe. Jane took a sip of her coffee and gently brought up the topic. Honey, don't you think you should at least say something to your mother-in-law about everything you've endured? Wouldn't you feel better if you exposed all the humiliation you suffered on the day of the housewarming? Mom, there's no need. Even if I explain, they're not going to change. And I'm not planning any grand revenge. The fact that I'm no longer their source of money, that's the greatest revenge. Sarah said calmly, looking out the window. Jane was proud of her daughter, but her heart ached for her at the same time, and she squeezed her hand tightly. A month later, a notice from the court arrived on David's phone, who was still waiting for Sarah to return, oblivious to everything. It was a notice of the filing of a divorce petition. David's face turned ashen as he read the notice, and he ran to Martha. Mom, we're in big trouble. Sarah. Sarah has filed for divorce. Martha snatched the paper from David's hand and read it. Her hand holding the paper began to tremble. What is this? That girl with no class has completely lost her mind. How dare she file for divorce? Mom, what do we do? It looks like she's really ending it. What do you mean? What do we do? Run over to her parents' house right now and get her to withdraw it. Kneel, beg, do whatever it takes to bring her back. At Martha's insistence, David began to wait outside Sarah's parents' house the next day. But he couldn't even catch a glimpse of Sarah. Instead, Jane came out and fiercely chased him away. Mom, please, just let me see Sarah. I was wrong about everything. There's no reason for you to see her, so leave now. If you show up here one more time, I'll report you for stalking. If you have something to say it through a lawyer in court. Jane firmly closed the door, and David could only stomp his feet on the street before returning home. Desperate, Martha started calling relatives, bad-mouthing Sarah and asking for help. Hello? Can you believe it? My daughter-in-law ran away from home on a whim and then filed for divorce. Where's the justice in that? But the reactions she received were completely different from what she had expected. Sister-in-law, I heard a rumor too. They say you locked your daughter-in-law in the kitchen and made her work, and then threw her out of the house on the day of the housewarming, and that she paid for the entire security deposit. Wasn't that too harsh? Martha raised her voice in panic. That's not true. She didn't come out because she was busy, and my son paid for the security deposit. All the relatives know your son's wages were garnished because he co-signed a bad loan. Sister-in-law, stop being so stubborn and apologize to your daughter-in-law. Martha slammed down the phone. All the other relatives sided with Sarah and criticized Martha. The reputation she had built up by boasting to everyone had crumbled in an instant. In the meantime, Martha and David's lives fell apart. A yellow warning notice was posted on their front door for unpaid utility bills, and their electricity and gas were on the verge of being cut off. Not a single penny of David's salary came in due to the garnishment, and Martha wailed every night as she opened the empty refrigerator. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. Sarah confidently entered the courtroom with her lawyer, while a haggard David sat powerlessly next to his. As the trial began, Sarah's lawyer presented the evidence he had prepared. This evidence proves that the entire $240,000 security deposit was funded by the plaintiff, Sarah Johnson. The defendant, David Miller, not only made no financial contribution but also caused significant financial losses to the plaintiff. David's lawyer tried to argue that it was a joint asset, but the judge shook his head after seeing the clear bank transfer records submitted by Sarah and David's debt records. This court acknowledges the divorce of the plaintiff, Sarah Johnson, and the defendant, David Miller. Furthermore, this court rules that the ownership of all assets, including the said security deposit, belongs to the plaintiff. Sarah calmly bowed her head in acknowledgement, while David collapsed in his seat, his face a mask of despair. As Sarah left the courtroom, Jane hugged her tightly. "You've been through so much, my dear. You're finally free from that hell." "Yes, Mom, it's really all over now." At home, Martha heard the news of the verdict and dropped her phone. "We've lost the house. We have no money. Where are we supposed to go now?" "David, we're ruined." Martha collapsed onto the cold living room floor and sobbed, but there was no one to hear her cries. At that moment, Sarah was sitting by the window in her mother's living room, basking in the warm sunlight. When Jane came over and asked if she felt relieved, Sarah smiled brightly and replied, "Mom, rather than feeling triumphant about revenge, it just feels like I've finished a very long piece of homework. I have nothing left to give and nothing left to be taken, so I feel at peace." It turns out the one who ends things quietly is the one who ultimately wins. Sarah took out a notebook from her bag with new ideas for her diner. Her eyes, filled with the resolve to live for herself and no longer be someone else's insurance policy, shone brighter than ever before. Did you enjoy the story? The part that resonated with me the most while writing this was how the house Sarah had poured everything into became a prison that isolated and consumed her. Exploitation, in the name of family, can sometimes be crueler than that from strangers. The mother-in-law's comment, "I am our family's insurance," was particularly tragic, as it implied she saw her daughter-in-law not as a person, but as an asset to be used. Ultimately, the lesson this story teaches us is that patient endurance does not always guarantee happiness. When someone takes your value for granted and begins to exclude you, the most powerful revenge is not to lash out in anger, but to quietly withdraw all your resources. As Sarah showed, stopping the emotional drain and clearly drawing legal and financial lines is the wisest way to protect yourself. The person who turns away silently is the one who wins in the end. I wanted to convey through this story that rather than becoming an insurance policy sacrifice for others, you should be the strongest fortress for yourself. I sincerely cheer for Sarah's new beginning, now that she has found true peace. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a like. I will continue to share similar stories.